Elena Vasquez still remembered the smell. Burned metal, melted plastic, and something else she could never name. Maybe it was the smell of hope dying. She pressed her back against the twisted remains of what used to be an armored transport. Her hand shook as she checked her rifle again. Half her squad was dead. The other half wished they were. 3 days ago, Elena had been excited. First contact with aliens. Humanity was finally meeting its neighbors among the stars. The diplomats said it would be peaceful. They were wrong. The hegemony spoke through 7 different alien races. Each one looked different, but they all said the same thing. Humans were too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous. They needed to give up their worlds and submit to proper guidance. Earth had 24 hours to surrender. The answer came in the form of every military ship humanity could launch. Elena had been part of the 3rd Terran Marines, sent to defend the colony on Kepler 442b. It was supposed to be a show of strength. Instead, it became a slaughter. The first alien ship appeared like a silver needle against the stars. Then another. Then 100 more. They moved in perfect formation, like dancers following invisible music. Elena watched from the surface as humanity's fleet moved to intercept them. The battle lasted 6 minutes. Human missiles bounced off energy shields like raindrops on glass. Plasma beams cut through human ships like they were made of paper. Elena watched good men and women die in silent explosions far above her head. The wreckage fell like burning snow. Then the aliens came for the ground forces. Elena's first look at a HFY hegemony soldier came through her rifle scope. Tall, gray skin, 4 arms, an armor that seemed to bend light around it. She pulled the trigger. The bullet hit the alien square in the chest and bounced off without leaving a scratch. The return fire vaporized Private Chun, who had been standing right next to her. What followed was not a battle. It was an execution. Human weapons might as well have been toys. Alien plasma weapons turned soldiers into ash with single shots. Their vehicles floated above the ground, moving faster than anything that size had a right to move. Elena ran. She was not proud of it, but she ran. Behind her, Sergeant Torres screamed orders into his radio. "Fall back to position, Baker." "I repeat, fall back to..." His words ended in a wet gurgle as something with too many teeth tore his throat out. The aliens had brought soldiers from all 7 races. Some looked like giant insects with metal claws. Others moved like liquid shadow, appearing behind human lines without warning. The worst ones looked almost human, except for the extra eyes and the way they smiled when they killed. Elena dove behind a concrete barrier as plasma fire turned the air above her head into superheated steam. Lieutenant Morrison landed beside her, bleeding from a dozen small cuts. Half his face was burned. "Orders, sir?" Elena gasped. Morrison laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Orders? Orders are to survive, Marine. That's all we got left." They held their position for another hour. Not because they were brave, but because there was nowhere left to run. Elena watched alien soldiers move through her dying unit like farmers, harvesting crops. Efficient, clean, professional. But something was wrong with their tactics. Elena could see it even through her terror. The aliens moved in perfect coordination. Every squad kept exact spacing. They advanced at precise intervals. They never broke formation, never improvised, never adapted to changing conditions. It was beautiful and terrible and completely predictable. When Corporal Jackson threw a grenade that killed 3 alien soldiers, the rest of their squad stopped and waited for new orders. They did not take cover. They did not return fire immediately. They paused, like computers processing new data. In that pause, Elena understood something important. These aliens might be advanced, but they were not flexible. They followed rules, even when those rules got them killed. The realization came too late to save her unit. But it might save humanity. Elena crawled through the rubble as alien. Voices spoke in musical languages she did not understand. They were not hunting the survivors. They were cataloging the dead, collecting human weapons, studying human tactics. Like scientists examining interesting specimens, she found 6 other survivors in the ruins of the command bunker. Morrison was gone. So was Torres. So were most of the people she had trained with, fought with, shared meals and bad jokes with, but they were alive. "We need to get to the extraction point," whispered Corporal Davis. Blood dripped from his broken nose as he spoke. "Extraction point is gone," Elena replied. She had seen it burn from orbit. "Everything is gone. So what do we do?" Elena looked through a crack in the concrete at the alien soldiers outside. They moved in those same perfect formations, following the same predictable patterns. Beautiful, efficient, deadly dot, and completely unable to adapt when things went wrong. "We learn," she said quietly. "We watch. We figure out how they think. And then we teach them that humans don't follow the rules." For 3 days, they hid in the ruins. Elena watched alien patrols march past in precise intervals. She saw how they communicated with hand signals that never varied. She noticed how they always checked the same hiding spots in the same order. The aliens were winning because they were better. Stronger, faster, more advanced in every way. But they were winning the war they expected to fight, not the war humanity was about to give them. On the 4th day, a human rescue ship landed under cover of darkness. Only 7 Marines from the entire regiment made it to the extraction point. Elena was one of them. As their ship lifted off, Elena looked down at the colony that used to be humanity's newest home. Alien vehicles moved in perfect geometric patterns across the surface. Everything was organized, cataloged, efficient. It looked like a chessboard. Elena smiled for the first time since the invasion began. Aliens played chess. But humans? Humans were about to teach them poker. The war was far from over. In fact, Elena suspected it had barely begun. 6 months after the massacre at Kepler 442b, Elena found herself in a very different kind of war. She floated in zero gravity inside a gutted asteroid, watching alien patrol ships drift past through a crack in the rock. Her new unit was nothing like the Marines she had served with before. They were engineers, miners, mechanics, and a few crazy pilots who had volunteered for what everyone called suicide missions. Command had given them a fancy name: Special Operations Group Tango. Elena just called them the Dirty Fighters. "Contact in 30 seconds, whispered Jake Morrison through the comm. He was the younger brother of the lieutenant Elena had watched die. Jake was not a soldier, but he was the best demolitions expert in human space. "Everyone ready?" Elena checked her gear one more time. Instead of a standard Marine rifle, she carried a mining laser that had been modified with spare parts from a broken coffee machine. Her armor was a patchwork of salvaged alien materials, held together with human engineering and pure stubbornness. It should not have worked. But somehow, it did. The alien patrol consisted of 3 ships moving in perfect triangular formation. They followed the same route every 6 hours, checking the same points in exactly the same order. After watching them for 2 weeks, Elena could predict their movements down to the second. That was their mistake. "Jake, remember what we talked about," Elena said. "These are not human ships. Do not think like a human engineer." "Roger that." Thinking like a very confused alien engineer instead. Elena almost smiled. 6 months ago, she would have been horrified by their plan. Today, it was just another Tuesday. The first alien ship drifted into position directly above their hiding spot. Elena held her breath and waited. The aliens had sensors that could detect human technology from kilometers away, but they were designed to find human technology that followed human rules. Elena's people had stopped following rules. "Mark," Jake whispered. He pressed a button that should have done nothing. The signal traveled through a network of salvaged alien communication cables that had been rewired to work backwards. Instead of carrying messages, they carried something the alien sensors had never seen before: pure human chaos. Every piece of equipment in Alana's unit started doing the wrong thing at exactly the right time. Mining drills began broadcasting radio signals. Gravity generators started playing music. Life support systems began flashing in patterns that meant happy birthday in 7 different human languages. The alien ship's computers tried to process this impossible data and failed. Their formation broke apart as each ship's artificial intelligence spent precious seconds trying to understand what it was seeing. In those seconds, Elena and her team acted. They had learned that alien technology was very good at detecting organized attacks. Energy weapons, coordinated explosions, anything that followed logical patterns. But they were terrible at recognizing improvised weapons that should not exist. Elena fired her mining laser. It should have been impossible to damage alien armor with mining equipment. But the laser had been modified with crystals, stolen from alien weapons and powered by a fusion reactor that Jake had built out of spare parts and determination. The beam punched through the alien ship's hull like it was made of butter. "What the hell was that?" Jake shouted as explosions rippled across the enemy vessel. "I have no idea," Elena replied honestly. "But it worked." The second ship turned toward them, but its movements were still confused and slow. Elena's team scattered like insects, each moving in a different direction with no apparent coordination. To alien tactical computers, it looked like random panic. It was not random. They had practiced this chaos for months. Maria Santos appeared behind the second ship in a fighter that had been built out of 3 different alien hulls welded together with human desperation. It should not have been able to fly. According to every law of physics Elena knew, it should have exploded the moment Maria turned on the engines. Instead, it moved like a drunken bird, changing direction in ways that made no sense. The alien ship's weapons tried to target it and failed. How do you hit something when you cannot predict where it will be? Maria opened fire with weapons that should not have worked together. Human projectile guns firing alien ammunition. Alien energy weapons powered by human reactors. The mixture of technologies created a beam that the alien shields had never encountered before. The second ship died in a fireball that lit up half the asteroid field. The third ship should have retreated. That was standard hegemony doctrine when facing unexpected losses. But Elena had been studying alien behavior for months, and she had learned something important. Aliens followed rules even when those rules would kill them. Instead of running, the ship began broadcasting distress signals while advancing toward Elena's position. It was calling for help and preparing to attack, exactly as its programming demanded. Elena and her team were ready. They had spent 2 weeks preparing this asteroid field for this moment. Every rock had been hollowed out and filled with surprises. Not bombs or missiles, but things the aliens would never expect. The alien ship fired its plasma weapons at Elena's asteroid. The beam struck what looked like empty rock, but was actually a network of mirrors and lenses that Jake had stolen from a destroyed space telescope. The plasma beams reflected, split, and scattered in directions that violated everything aliens knew about physics. Some of the energy bounced harmlessly into space. Some of it struck other asteroids, triggering chain reactions that lit up the darkness. And some of it reflected straight back into the alien ship that had fired it. Elena watched through her scope as the hegemony vessel was destroyed by its own weapons. The explosion was beautiful in the way that only absolute victory could be beautiful. "Base, this is Tango Team," Elena reported into her radio. "Patrol eliminated. No human casualties. Copy that, Tango. What's your secret?" Elena looked around at her team of engineers, miners, and crazy pilots. They were grinning like children who had just gotten away with stealing cookies. Their equipment was held together with tape and prayer. Their tactics made no sense to anyone, including themselves. "We stopped trying to fight like aliens," she said. "We started fighting like humans." Over the following weeks, word of their success spread through the human fleet. Other units began adopting Elena's tactics. They stopped trying to match alien technology and started using human creativity instead. Engineers began building weapons out of farming equipment. Pilots started flying in patterns that violated every rule of space combat. Marines learned to fight dirty, using tactics that no military academy would ever teach. The hegemony responded by sending more ships, better equipment, smarter commanders. They analyzed every human victory and developed countermeasures for every human trick. But they could not develop countermeasures for human stubbornness. Every time the aliens adapted to one impossible tactic, humanity invented 3 new ones. Elena floated in her asteroid hideout and watched alien patrols change their patterns for the 4th time that month. They were learning, becoming less predictable. That was fine. Humans were just getting started. The aliens wanted a war. Elena would give them one they would never understand. Elena had been breathing recycled air for 4 months. She could taste the metal filters in every breath, could smell the fierce sweat of 12,000 humans trapped in a station built for 4,000. Proxima. Station hung in space like a wounded bird, its hull scarred by months of alien bombardment. Outside the reinforced windows, Elena could see the hegemony fleet waiting in perfect formation. 200 ships arranged in geometric patterns that never changed. They were waiting for humanity to suffocate. "Water rations cut again today," reported Chief Martinez as he entered the command center. His face was gray with exhaustion. "We're down to half a liter per person per day." Elena nodded without looking away from her tactical display. She was officially just a sergeant, but surviving officers had learned to listen to her ideas. "How long?" 3 weeks if we're lucky. 2 if we're not. Elena had heard this conversation every day for a month. The aliens were not trying to storm the station anymore. They had learned that humans fought harder when cornered. Instead, they were just waiting. It was a smart strategy. Logical. Efficient. It was also exactly what Elena had hoped they would do. "Chief, I need you to gather all the maintenance crew supervisors. Engineering too. Oh, get anyone who knows how to fix broken things." Martinez looked confused. "What for?" "We're going to teach these aliens why humans don't give up." The meeting took place in Cargo Bay 7, which had been converted into a refugee camp when the siege began. Elena stood before 50 men and women who had never been soldiers. Janitors, engineers, cooks, and computer technicians. People who had signed up to maintain a space station, not fight a war. But the war had found them anyway. "The aliens think they're smart," Elena began. "They think they can wait us out. Let us run out of air and water and food until we surrender." A hand went up. Elena recognized Susan Chun, one of the hydroponics engineers. "Sergeant, we are running out." "The numbers don't lie." "You're right," Elena agreed. "We're dying slowly. But the aliens don't understand something important about humans. We don't die quietly." She gestured to the walls around them. "This station has been our home for 6 months. We know every pipe, every wire, every bolt. The aliens know nothing except what their sensors tell them." Elena pulled up a holographic display of the station's layout. Red dots marked alien sensor positions. Green dots showed human defensive positions. But it was the blue dots that interested her most. Maintenance shafts, she said. Ventilation ducts. Service corridors. Space is too small for soldiers, but perfect for very angry maintenance crews carrying very dangerous tools. The plan that emerged was not military doctrine. It was pure human madness. Elena and her volunteers spent 2 weeks preparing. They turned cleaning supplies into explosives. They modified food printers to create weapons. They rewired entertainment systems to broadcast on alien communication frequencies. Most importantly, they made noise. Humans had discovered early in the siege that aliens were disturbed by chaotic sounds. Their enhanced hearing, designed to pick up subtle environmental changes, became a weakness when exposed to human music, laughter, and shouting. Elena's team began broadcasting continuously. They played everything from classical symphonies to death metal to children's nursery rhymes. They mixed in random conversations, industrial noise, and recordings of human celebrations. The alien fleet responded by increasing their jamming attempts. But Elena's people kept finding new ways to break through. They used everything from cooking equipment to medical scanners as improvised radio transmitters. The broadcasts had an unexpected effect. They reached other human settlements that had been cut off from communication. Suddenly, signals began appearing from across the system. Hidden bases, refugee camps, and isolated ships that had been presumed lost. The siege of Proxima Station was not happening in isolation. It was being watched by thousands of humans who had been waiting for someone to make the first move. Elena realized she had accidentally started a rebellion. Sergeant called Private Williams from his voice position at the communications station. We're getting reports of coordinated attacks across 7 star systems. The aliens are pulling ships back to defend their supply lines. Elena looked at the tactical display with new eyes. The perfect alien formation was beginning to break apart as ships peeled away to respond to threats elsewhere. The siege was weakening. That was when Elena decided to do something absolutely insane. All maintenance teams, this is Sergeant Vasquez. Operation Angry Janitor is a go. Elena had never been prouder to serve with non-combat personnel. Susan Chan led a team through the ventilation system to reach the station's outer hull. They carried cutting tools, welding equipment, and a complete disregard for personal safety. Their job was to create undetectable breaches that would vent atmosphere in patterns that looked like system failures. Meanwhile, Carlos Rodriguez took his team into the power distribution center. They began systematically overloading circuits in ways that would create spectacular light shows without actually damaging critical systems. To alien sensors, it would look like the station was suffering cascading failures. Elena herself led the most dangerous mission. She and 12 volunteers suited up and launched themselves out of a garbage disposal chute, using maintenance thrusters to reach the closest alien ship. They carried weapons made from spare parts and powered by righteous anger. Their armor was improvised from cooking pots and foam insulation. They should have died in the first 10 seconds. Instead, they landed on the alien hull and began cutting their way inside. The alien ship was a masterpiece of engineering. Smooth corridors, perfect lighting, air that smelled like flowers. It was also completely unprepared for humans who had spent months learning to fight with whatever they could find. Elena's team moved through the ship like a force of nature. They disabled systems with tools designed to fix broken plumbing. They captured control rooms using equipment meant for cleaning air ducts. They fought alien soldiers with weapons that should not have existed. The aliens retreated to defensive positions and called for help. But their help was busy dealing with rebellions across human space. And their defensive positions had been designed to stop organized military attacks. Not 12 maintenance workers who were really angry about being trapped in a tin can. For 4 months, Elena reached the ships. communication center and did something that would become legend throughout human space. She hijacked the alien command frequency and began broadcasting. Not military intelligence, not strategic information, not threats or demands. She broadcast the sound of 12,000 humans who refused to die quietly. Laughter, songs, stories, arguments about whose turn it was to fix the water recycler. A heated debate about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. The sound of children playing games in corridors that had become their playground. The sound of humans being human, even when surrounded by enemies who wanted them extinct. Across the hegemony fleet, alien commanders listened in confusion as their communication networks filled with the chaotic noise of human life. Their translators could not process the emotional content. Their tactical computers could not analyze the strategic value. They did not understand what they were hearing, but they understood what happened next. Elena's broadcast reached every human in the system. Hidden bases revealed themselves. Refugee ships dropped their camouflage. Scattered resistance groups began coordinated attacks. The siege of Proxima Station ended not with a military victory, but with the sound of humanity laughing in the face of extinction. When the alien fleet finally retreated, Elena stood in the station's observation deck and watched them go. Their perfect formation was broken, their confidence shattered. They had tried to make humans surrender by taking away their hope. Instead, they had given humanity something far more dangerous than hope. They had given them a reason to be angry, and humans. Elena reflected as she breathed fresh air for the first time in months. Were very good at being angry. Elena stood in the command center of a captured hegemony warship, watching alien text scroll across screens she was only beginning to understand. The ship still smelled wrong to human senses. Too clean, too perfect. Like a hospital that had never seen blood. But it was theirs now. Target acquired, reported Commander Hayes from the navigation station. He had been a transport pilot before the war. Now he commanded humanity's most successful infiltration unit. Hegemony Fleet Command is 3 jumps away. Minimum escort. Elena studied the tactical display. 8 months ago, she would have been planning how to hide from that enemy formation. Today, she was planning how to destroy it. The war had changed. More importantly, humanity had changed. What's their escort strength? She asked. 12 ships. Standard formation. They're using Communication Protocol 7. Elena smiled. Communication Protocol 7 meant the alien fleet was following standard security procedures. Predictable, efficient, and completely vulnerable to humans who had stopped caring about proper procedures months ago. Sarah, how are our infiltration assets? Captain Sarah Kim looked up from her intelligence console. She had been a xenobiologist before the war, specializing in alien cultures. Now she specialized in pretending to be alien cultures. We have 3 teams aboard their ships already. They've been there for 2 weeks. The plan Elena's people called Operation Wolf Pack would have been impossible at the start of the war. It relied on captured alien technology, stolen communication codes, and the complete willingness of human soldiers to do things the military doctrine said were insane. It also relied on something the aliens had never expected. Humanity's talent for acting. Elena's infiltration teams were not trying to pass as aliens. That was impossible. Instead, they were pretending to be alien prisoners being transferred between ships. The hegemony had been capturing humans for months, studying them like laboratory specimens. They never suspected that some of those specimens might be studying them back. Begin Phase 1, Elena ordered. Light years away, human soldiers aboard alien ships began their performance. They acted confused, frightened, and broken. They answered questions in ways that revealed just enough information to seem genuine while hiding everything important. And They planted devices in places alien security would never think to look. Elena watched the enemy fleet's communication patterns change as her people went to work. The aliens used quantum encryption that should have been unbreakable, but they had never encountered humans who were willing to break their own people out of prison ships just to install listening devices were in their network, reported Lieutenant Torres from the communication station. He was the nephew of the sergeant Elena had watched die 2 years ago. Full access to fleet coordination protocols. Good. Begin. Phase 2. Phase 2 involved something Elena called aggressive pacifism. Her teams aboard the alien ships began sabotaging non-critical systems in ways that looked like equipment failures, life support fluctuations, navigation glitches, computer errors that caused minor but annoying problems. Nothing dangerous, nothing that would hurt anyone, but everything perfectly timed to create maximum confusion. Enemy fleet is reporting cascade failures across multiple systems, Torres announced. They're calling for technical support. Elena's grin was predatory. Send them some. The technical support arrived in the form of Commander Hayes' transport ship, broadcasting stolen identification codes and carrying a cargo hold full of very dangerous humans pretending to be very helpful repair technicians. Within an hour, Elena's people were aboard the Hegemony flagship, wearing stolen uniforms and carrying toolboxes full of weapons that alien security scanners could not identify. Elena, Hayes whispered into his comm as he worked his way toward the alien command center. You need to see this. Elena watched through Hayes' helmet camera as he accessed the alien database. What she saw made her blood run cold. The Hegemony was not just fighting humanity. They were fighting a war across dozens of star systems against races that refused to submit to alien authority. Humans were just the latest species to be marked for extinction. But they were not the first. Elena saw records of entire civilizations being wiped out for the crime of being unmanageable. Billions of sentient beings are reduced to statistical reports and archived cultural samples. Elena, Hayes whispered urgently, there are other species fighting back. The Karathi in the Vega system, the Zephyrians near Rigel, they've been holding out for decades. Elena felt something shift in her understanding of the war. Humanity was not alone. They were part of a galaxy-wide resistance against an empire that demanded perfection and destroyed anything that failed to meet their standards. Download everything, she ordered. Every star chart, every resistance contact, every piece of intelligence they have. That'll take hours. The security systems will be too busy dealing with Phase 3 to notice. Elena activated the final part of her plan. Across the enemy fleet, her hidden agents simultaneously released what she called concentrated human chaos into the alien ship networks. Every screen began displaying random images from human databases. Cat videos, cooking shows, amateur music recordings, badly written poetry, home movies of human children playing in gardens that no longer existed. The alien command network, designed to process tactical data with perfect efficiency, was suddenly flooded with the complete cultural output of a species that created art for the simple joy of creating. The alien fleet's artificial intelligence systems tried to analyze this information and failed spectacularly. What was the strategic value of a recording of an elderly human woman teaching her granddaughter to bake cookies? What did it mean when 10,000 humans uploaded videos of themselves singing the same song with slight variations? While the alien computers tried to process human culture, Elena's strike teams moved. They were not trying to capture ships anymore. They were hunting individuals. The hegemony commanders who had ordered the destruction of entire worlds. The military leaders who had turned genocide into policy. Elena's people had learned to read alien facial expressions, to understand their body language, to identify rank insignia and command codes. They moved through alien ships like ghosts, striking at leadership while leaving ordinary soldiers alive. Target 1 eliminated, reported Hayes as he disabled the fleet commanders. Life support with a device built from a kitchen timer and spare electronics. Target 2 eliminated, announced Captain Kim as she used alien medical equipment to deliver a fatal dose of human-safe medication that was lethal to alien biology. One by one, the hegemony command structure collapsed, not from overwhelming firepower or superior technology, but from humans who had learned to be very good at killing people who tried to commit genocide. Fleets breaking up, Torres reported, as alien ships began to scatter in confusion. They're calling for reinforcements. Let them, Elena replied. We know where their reinforcements are coming from now. The captured intelligence had revealed something crucial. The hegemony was not as united as they pretended. Several member species have been coerced into joining through threats against their homeworlds. Others were beginning to question whether the cost of maintaining galactic order was worth the constant warfare. Elena's teams had found something more valuable than military intelligence. They had found out. Begin Phase 4, she ordered. Phase 4 involved broadcasting the truth to every alien ship in the system. Not human propaganda, but the hegemony's own records. Lists of destroyed civilizations. Orders for mass executions. Evidence that the peaceful galactic order was built on the bones of anyone who dared to be different. Elena watched alien communication networks light up with arguments, questions, and something that might have been rebellion. Elena, Hayes called from his position aboard the alien flagship. You need to see this. We're getting surrender signals. 3 ships are requesting permission to defect. Elena stared at the tactical display in amazement. Alien ships were breaking formation, their crews refusing to continue fighting for an empire they no longer believed in. The hegemony had based their strategy on the assumption that their member species would always follow orders. They had never prepared for the possibility that humans might teach them to question those orders. Accept their surrender, Elena ordered, and get our people ready for extraction. We have bigger fish to hunt now. As her ships prepared to jump to their next target, Elena reflected on how much the war had changed. 8 months ago, humans had been fighting for survival. Today, they were fighting for justice. Tomorrow, they would be fighting for the future of every free species in the galaxy. The hunters had become the hunted, and humanity was just getting started. Elena stood on the bridge of the hegemony's former flagship and watched the last alien fleet jump to hyperspace in retreat. 3 years after first contact, the war was finally over. The ship around her hummed with activity as humans and their new alien allies worked together to coordinate the galaxy-wide ceasefire. Species that had been enemies for decades were now learning to communicate without weapons pointed at each other. It should have felt like victory. Instead, Elena felt hollow. Final report from the Vega system, announced Commander Hayes as he approached her position. His uniform was a patchwork of human and alien materials, held together with the same improvisation that had won them the war. The Karathi rebellion succeeded. The hegemony garrison surrendered 3 hours ago. Elena nodded absently. The Karathi had been fighting the hegemony for 40 years, before humans even knew aliens existed. They deserved their freedom. What about the core worlds? Complete surrender. The Hegemony Council is requesting terms for a permanent peace treaty. Elena almost laughed. 3 years ago, the hegemony had demanded humanity's unconditional surrender. Today, they were begging for mercy from the species they had tried to exterminate. Any word from Earth? Hayes' expression grew solemn. The reconstruction fleets arrived last week. Initial reports say It'll take decades to rebuild what we lost. Elena closed her eyes and tried not to think about the cities that no longer existed, the forests that had been turned to glass, the people who would never come home. The price of victory had been measured in worlds. How many? She asked quietly. Casualties? Military and civilian combined. Hayes paused, checking his datapad. 800 million confirmed dead. 2 billion displaced. 43 colonies completely destroyed. Elena felt the weight of those numbers settle on her shoulders. 800 million people who had died so that humanity could learn to fight dirty enough to survive. Elena, Hayes said gently, it's not your fault. None of us could have known. I know. Elena opened her eyes and looked at the stars outside the viewport. But I also know what we became to win this war. I'm not sure that was entirely human anymore. Around them, the bridge crew continued their work. Former hegemony officers taught human technicians how to operate alien systems. Human Marines shared ration packs with surrendered alien soldiers. Children who had grown up during the war played games with alien youngsters who were learning that humans were not the monsters their parents had described. It was a beautiful sight. It was also something that would have been impossible at the start of the war. Elena remembered the scared Marine who had hidden in the ruins of Kepler 442b, watching alien soldiers move in perfect formation. That woman had followed rules, trusted in military doctrine, and believed that good people fought wars with honor and discipline. The woman standing on this bridge had learned to break every rule, to fight without honor when necessary, and to do terrible things for good reasons. Do you think it was worth it? She asked Hayes. He considered the question seriously. Elena appreciated that about him. Hayes never gave easy answers to hard questions. Ask me in 50 years, he said finally, when we see what kind of galaxy we've built with this piece. Elena nodded. That was probably the best answer anyone could give. Incoming transmission from the Rigel system, reported Lieutenant Torres from his communications station. Admiral Chun wants to speak with you personally. Elena sighed. Admiral Chun commanded the human fleet's War Crimes Tribunal. They had been working for months to document hegemony atrocities and ensure justice for the species that had suffered under alien rule. But they had also been investigating human actions during the war. Some of Elena's tactics had saved lives. Others had crossed lines that civilized beings were not supposed to cross. Put him through. Admiral Chun's weathered face appeared on the main screen. He looked tired, but there was satisfaction in his eyes. Sergeant Vasquez. I have news from the tribunal. Elena braced herself. She had always known this day would come. The Hegemony War Crimes Court has reached its final verdict, Chung continued. 5,000 former hegemony officials will face trial for genocide and crimes against sentient species. 2,000 have been sentenced to rehabilitation programs. 300 will face execution. Elena waited for the other shoe to drop. The tribunal also reviewed human conduct during the war, Chun said carefully. Your unit's actions specifically. Here it comes. Elena thought. The court finds that while human forces occasionally violated traditional rules of war, these violations were necessary responses to an enemy that had declared their intent to commit genocide. Your tactics, however unconventional, are ruled to be legitimate acts of species self-defense. Elena felt something she had not expected. Disappointment. She had been prepared to face consequences for the things she had done. The fact that they were legally justified did not make them feel less heavy. Furthermore, Chun continued, the court recommends that your tactical innovations be studied and incorporated into galactic defense doctrines. Your ability to adapt human ingenuity to overcome superior technology may be crucial for defending against future threats. Elena realized what he was saying. Humanity's war crimes were being turned into military textbooks. Admiral, she said carefully. I'm not sure that's a good idea. Chen's expression grew serious. Elena, what you and your people did was not pretty, but it worked. It saved not just humanity, but dozens of other species. Sometimes survival requires doing ugly things. After Chen signed off, Elena found herself standing alone on the observation deck, looking out at the galaxy that humans had helped to free. Ships from 100 different species moved past the viewport, their crews working together to rebuild war had destroyed. Captain Kim approached quietly. She had been offered command of a news and a cultural institute, but she had chosen to remain with Elena's unit. Some bonds could only be forged in the fire of shared survival. Regrets? Kim asked. Elena considered the question. Did she regret the maintenance workers who had learned to build weapons from spare parts? The engineers who had turned mining equipment into instruments of war? The ordinary people who had become extraordinary killers because the alternative was extinction? Did she regret the children who would grow up speaking both human and alien languages? The former enemies who now shared meals and stories? The galaxy that was learning to value diversity instead of demanding conformity? I regret what it cost, Elena said finally. But I don't regret that we survived. Kim nodded. The Karathi ambassador asked me something interesting today. She wanted to know what humans called ourselves before we met aliens. What did you tell her? I told her we were still human. Just more experienced human. Elena smiled for the first time in weeks. More experienced. I like that. As Elena watched ships full of former enemies work together to repair war damage, she realized something important. Humanity had not just survived the war. They had changed what survival meant. Before first contact, survival had meant avoiding danger, following rules, and hoping that civilization would protect them. The war had taught them that sometimes civilization was not enough. Sometimes survival meant making new rules, taking impossible risks, and protecting yourself. But it also meant protecting others. Elena looked around the bridge, at humans and aliens working side by side. In 3 years, humanity had gone from being victims to being saviors. They had learned to fight dirty enough to win. But they had also learned when to stop fighting. That might be the most human thing of all. Elena, Hayes called from the command station. We're getting reports of a distress signal from the Outer Rim. Unknown species, under attack by automated hegemony defense systems that haven't gotten the surrender order yet. Elena looked at her tired crew, at people who had been fighting for 3 years and deserved to rest. Then she looked at the star charts, showing another species that needed help. Plot a course, she ordered. Best possible speed. Ma'am, Torres said carefully, we're not officially required to respond. The war is over. Elena smiled and felt something settle into place in her chest. Something that felt like purpose. The war is over, she agreed. But we're still human. And humans help people who need help. As the ship jumped to hyperspace toward another impossible mission, Elena reflected on what she had learned. Humanity had survived against all odds, not because they were stronger or smarter than their enemies, but because they had refused to accept that survival was impossible. They were still here, still human, still stubborn enough to keep fighting for anyone who needed fighting for. And Elena suspected that was exactly what the galaxy needed.